Vito Corleone. Robert De Niro's portrayal of young Vito Corleone in The Godfather Part 2 is a masterclass in subtlety, transformation, and cultural authenticity. Tasked with depicting the early life of a character immortalized by Marlon Brando, De Niro did not aim to impersonate. Instead, he dissected Vito's psychological roots and reconstructed him as a quieter, more calculating man shaped by trauma, exile, and necessity. Set in the early 20th century, the film traces Vito's evolution from a Sicilian immigrant orphan to the benevolent yet deadly patriarch of a New York crime family. De Niro immersed himself in the character's past by researching early 90s Italian-American life. He studied the Sicilian dialect meticulously, even traveling to Sicily and living among locals to absorb the speech patterns and behaviors. His lines in the film are almost entirely in Sicilian, delivered with such authenticity that it earned him widespread acclaim and helped him secure the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actor. What makes De Niro's Vito so compelling is the way he internalizes power. His performance is quiet, he speaks sparingly, and rarely raises his voice. But every gesture conveys authority. Whether he's offering help to a neighbor or planning a killing, he maintains the same composed presence. His facial expressions, often unreadable, create an air of mystery that reflects the character's growing ability to lead without brute force. Crucially, De Niro emphasizes Vito's morality within a corrupt world. When he kills Don Fanucci, the local extortionist, it is not out of ambition but necessity. The scene is a turning point, and De Niro's stoic demeanor, walking home through the dark alley after the murder with a wrapped gun under his arm, marks the emergence of a new kind of Don. The quiet gravity in that moment reveals a man who has decided to protect his community by becoming its most feared figure. De Niro's approach to movement also enhances the transformation. His Vito walks slowly, calculatedly, with a slightly hunched posture that mirrors Brando's physicality years later. These nuances helped bridge the generational gap between De Niro and Brando's versions of the character, making the prequel feel seamlessly integrated. Travis Bickle. Robert De Niro's performance as Travis Bickle in Taxi Driver is one of the most unsettling and deeply studied portrayals of psychological decay in cinema. Directed by Martin Scorsese, the film captures the isolation, paranoia, and moral confusion of post-Vietnam America through the eyes of a mentally unwell taxi driver who spirals into violence. De Niro doesn't just play Travis, he inhabits every layer of his fractured psyche. Travis is a night shift cab driver in New York City, living in near-total isolation. De Niro committed to the role by acquiring a real cab driver's license and working 12-hour shifts in Manhattan prior to shooting. This allowed him to absorb the city's nocturnal rhythms and the unsettling randomness of its streets. His research went beyond surface details. He studied mental illness and loneliness, shaping Travis as a man slowly consumed by resentment and moral confusion. De Niro's physical presence in the role is meticulous. He altered his voice to sound flatter and more emotionless. His delivery is awkward, often stilted, as though Travis is unsure how to connect with other people. These choices paint him as someone detached from reality but yearning for meaning. His famous journal voiceovers are calm and monotone, contrasting sharply with the violence he begins to fantasize about.
Someday a real rain will come and wash all this scum off the streets.
The transformation peaks in the film's second half. De Niro famously improvised the "You talking to me?" scene, standing in front of a mirror, pointing a gun, mimicking confrontation. The line became iconic not because it's catchy but because of how disturbingly real it feels. In that moment, Travis rehearses violence as performance, reflecting his descent into delusion and his desire to become a force of reckoning in a city he sees as decayed. His physical transformation is equally telling. As Travis prepares for his self-appointed mission, he cuts his hair into a mohawk, a style associated with soldiers going into battle. De Niro wears it like war paint, signaling his total break from societal norms. The slow, deliberate way he straps on his custom-built gun rig, the almost meditative way he cleans his weapons. These rituals echo the obsessive discipline of someone who sees violence as purification. By the film's climax, Travis is both terrifying and tragic. De Niro delivers a performance that resists easy categorization. Travis is not a hero or anti-hero. He is a phantom conjured by a society that abandoned him.
Sorry for stopping your video, but you really should subscribe.
Jake LaMotta. Robert De Niro's performance as Jake LaMotta in Raging Bull is widely regarded as one of the most transformative and physically punishing roles in film history. Directed by Martin Scorsese, the film explores the rise and fall of the middleweight boxing champion, focusing not just on his career in the ring, but on the deep insecurities and rage that defined his personal life. De Niro's commitment to the role went beyond acting. It was full-body immersion into a man torn apart by jealousy, self-loathing, and violence. To embody LaMotta at the height of his boxing career, De Niro underwent intense training. He trained for over a year with the real Jake LaMotta himself, who later claimed that De Niro could have gone professional. The training wasn't theatrical, it was technical. De Niro learned proper footwork, punch combinations, and ring strategy, ensuring that every fight scene felt authentic. The fight choreography, filmed in slow motion and stylized black and white, highlighted De Niro's precision and control in the ring. The transformation didn't stop there. To play LaMotta in his later years, bloated, washed up, and riddled with regret, De Niro gained over 60 pounds. He stopped production for several months and traveled through Europe, eating large meals and abandoning exercise. This weight gain was not simulated, it was real, and it drastically altered his face and body. The toll it took was so extreme that production had to be limited to one take per scene due to De Niro's health risks. This physical shift mirrored LaMotta's internal collapse, a man once driven by discipline now lost in gluttony and self-pity. De Niro also mastered LaMotta's vocal cadence. His Bronx accent, speech hesitations, and emotional volatility were all carefully reproduced.
I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody.
The scenes outside the ring, where LaMotta's insecurities erupt in jealousy, especially toward his wife Vicky, are some of the most intense in De Niro's career. He plays LaMotta as a man constantly looking for betrayal, even where there is none. His inability to articulate his feelings leads him to physical aggression, and De Niro captures that repression with haunting realism. The dressing room scene, where LaMotta sobs and pounds the wall, repeating, "I'm not an animal," is a shattering moment. It distills the character's entire arc, a man with brute strength but no emotional compass. De Niro doesn't play LaMotta for sympathy, he plays him as he was, self-destructive, proud, and broken. Rupert Pupkin, in The King of Comedy, Robert De Niro delivers a performance that's as cringe-inducing as it is eerily prophetic. His portrayal of Rupert Pupkin, a delusional, aspiring stand-up comedian obsessed with fame, marks one of the most psychologically nuanced characters in his career. Unlike the violent instability of Travis Bickle or Jake LaMotta, Rupert's menace is rooted in denial, fantasy, and a pathological need for recognition. De Niro taps into that pathology with surgical precision. The result is a character study of a man whose desperation for celebrity leads him into terrifying absurdity. Rupert is not an overtly aggressive figure. He's awkward, overly polite, and outwardly cheerful. But De Niro infuses him with a simmering instability, shown in his forced smiles, his rehearsed laughs, and his habit of talking to cardboard cutouts in his basement. Pupkin lives in an elaborate fantasy world where he believes he's already famous. De Niro performs this delusion with chilling commitment, making it impossible to tell when Rupert is joking, and when he truly believes his lies. De Niro's physicality in the role is subdued but loaded with discomfort. Rupert's suit is slightly too neat, his posture too stiff, his hair too perfectly combed. Everything about him screams someone trying too hard to appear normal. De Niro crafted Rupert's mannerisms based on obsessive fan behavior and studied tapes of real stand-up comics. He didn't try to make Rupert funny. In fact, his stand-up routine in the film is awkward and sad, but what's unsettling is Rupert's belief that it's brilliant. One of the most disturbing scenes involves Rupert rehearsing his television debut in front of a fantasy audience, including imagined applause and fake interview segments with the talk show host, Jerry Langford. De Niro plays it with complete sincerity, smiling and bowing to people who aren't there. It's delusion portrayed as discipline. Pupkin practices fame the way others practice music or boxing. When Rupert kidnaps Langford to demand a spot on his show, De Niro maintains the character's bizarre sense of entitlement without tipping into caricature. He doesn't rant or rage, he stays calm, polite, even friendly, while committing a felony. This duality makes the performance all the more unnerving. In the end, Rupert Pupkin achieves a warped form of success. Whether it's real or imagined is left ambiguous, but De Niro's portrayal makes one thing clear. Fame, in Rupert's mind, is worth any cost. It's a performance that predicted the age of reality TV and viral fame, decades before they arrived. Al Capone. Robert De Niro's portrayal of Al Capone in The Untouchables is a lesson in controlled flamboyance and calculated menace. While Capone doesn't dominate the screen time, De Niro ensures that every scene he appears in is stamped with authority. He plays Capone not just as a gangster, but as a theatrical, self-made emperor who believes in his own myth. De Niro doesn't seek subtlety here. He embraces the grandiosity and rage that made Capone both feared and admired during Prohibition. Before filming, De Niro insisted on historical accuracy down to the finest detail. He famously gained nearly 30 pounds to replicate Capone's bulk, not through prosthetics, but through a real shift in body mass, aided by a diet heavy in pasta and pastries. He also had custom-made silk underwear commissioned from the same Chicago tailors that Capone used, not because it would be visible, but because it would help him feel like Capone from the inside out. This immersive method acting allowed him to inhabit the psychology of a man who saw himself as royalty. De Niro's Capone speaks with rhythm and swagger. His dialogue is articulate but dripping with threat. His voice has a clipped cadence, with sharp bursts of energy followed by cool, deliberate pauses. It's most evident in the infamous baseball bat scene, a moment that defines the performance.
But in the field, what? Part of a team.
De Niro delivers a faux motivational speech at a dinner table before suddenly beating a man to death with a bat. He transitions from jovial host to cold-blooded killer in a heartbeat. The shift is so smooth, it's chilling. He doesn't break stride, doesn't yell, he simply removes the mask of civility. Physically, De Niro uses posture and gesture to project dominance. His Capone moves through rooms like he owns them, he leans back in chairs, gestures broadly, and makes constant eye contact, often holding it too long. These choices establish Capone not just as a criminal, but as someone who demands to be worshipped. Even his wardrobe, tailored suits, polished shoes, fur coats, is used as a weapon of intimidation. De Niro avoids caricature by grounding the role in ego and logic. His Capone doesn't see himself as evil, he sees himself as a businessman making tough decisions. That internal justification, delivered through De Niro's confident and grounded performance, makes the character more terrifying. He is a man who smiles when he kills and believes it's just part of the job. Jimmy Conway. In Goodfellas, Robert De Niro plays James "Jimmy the Gent" Conway, a seasoned gangster with charm, ruthlessness, and a cold, calculating mind. Directed by Martin Scorsese, the film offers a sweeping look at the life of a mob associate, and De Niro's performance as Jimmy acts as both a magnetic center and an ominous warning. He doesn't dominate the narrative like Ray Liotta's Henry Hill, but his presence is felt in every major turn of the plot. De Niro portrays Jimmy as the embodiment of the seductive, violent heart of organized crime, generous when it benefits him, deadly when it doesn't. Jimmy is introduced as the smooth operator, the guy who tips everyone, knows all the angles, and commands respect without needing to shout. De Niro builds this image through controlled posture, casual gestures, and a gaze that always seems to be evaluating. His Jimmy smiles often, but the smile never reaches his eyes. It's performative, masking his capacity for violence. This duality is what makes the character so dangerous. One of De Niro's most compelling choices is restraint. Jimmy rarely loses his temper, but when he does, it's surgical. The clearest example is the sequence following the Lufthansa heist, one of the largest cash thefts in American history. After the job, Jimmy begins quietly eliminating everyone involved. De Niro doesn't yell or rant, he gives Jimmy a quiet stillness, a tightening of the jaw, a sidelong glance, that signals death more clearly than a raised voice ever could. He projects paranoia and control, calculating risk with each breath. De Niro also brings charm to Jimmy without glorifying him. In the early scenes, Jimmy is friendly, generous with cash, and takes Henry under his wing. There's mentorship in their relationship, but it's laced with danger. De Niro plays these layers with finesse. His Jimmy knows how to seduce people into trusting him, only to turn on them when trust becomes liability. It's all business, and De Niro never lets the audience forget it. His wardrobe and body language reinforce this duality. Jimmy is always impeccably dressed, moves with confidence, and never appears out of control. But his eyes are constantly searching, reading people, measuring threats. De Niro internalizes the gangster ethos, always stay one step ahead and never leave witnesses. Leonard Lowe. In Awakenings, Robert De Niro takes a dramatic turn from his usual intense and often volatile characters to portray Leonard Lowe, a man who has been catatonic for decades due to encephalitis lethargica. The film, based on the memoir by neurologist Oliver Sacks, centers around a group of patients who are temporarily awakened from their immobile state by an experimental drug. De Niro's role required an extraordinary level of physical control, emotional restraint, and gradual transformation. He delivers a performance that is deeply empathetic and devastatingly human. Leonard begins the film as a man locked inside his body, incapable of speech or voluntary movement. De Niro spent weeks studying archival footage of patients suffering from similar conditions, mimicking their rigid posture, involuntary tics, and delayed reflexes. He also worked with neurologists to understand the muscle rigidity and spasmodic movements caused by the illness. His physical precision in these early scenes is astonishing. Every blink, every slight motion carries weight. When the drug L-Dopa takes effect, Leonard awakens for the first time in decades. De Niro plays this moment not with shock or melodrama, but with subtle awe and rediscovered joy. His movements become more fluid, his expressions more open. The shift is gradual, believable, and layered with emotional resonance. There's a childlike wonder in how he rediscovers the world. Light, touch, music, all filtered through a man who never experienced adulthood. What makes the role especially challenging is that De Niro must portray both recovery and decline. As the drug's effects begin to wear off, Leonard experiences terrifying bouts of muscle spasms and neurological regression. De Niro's depiction of this deterioration is unflinching. He does not try to soften it or make it palatable. He shows the fear, the frustration, and the heartbreak of a man losing his grip on freedom. In one scene, Leonard tries to convince the doctors to let him go outside, insisting that every moment counts.
I'd go for a walk. I'd look at things. I'd talk to people. I would do all the things that you people take for granted.
De Niro's delivery, trembling, passionate, pleading, strikes at the core of human dignity. He transforms Leonard from a medical subject into a man with agency, dreams, and desires. The performance becomes a meditation on the fragility of life and the resilience of the spirit. De Niro's work in Awakenings is often overlooked among his more iconic roles, but it's one of his most technically and emotionally demanding. There are no guns, no violent outbursts, no bravado, just a man trying to hold on to his second chance at life, even as it slips away. Max Cady. Robert De Niro's role as Max Cady in Cape Fear is among his most disturbing and transformative performances. Playing a convicted rapist bent on revenge after being released from prison, De Niro builds a character who is both grotesquely charismatic and unrelentingly terrifying. His portrayal of Cady draws from Southern Gothic tropes, a deeply religious, self-educated ex-con with a messianic sense of justice and a flair for psychological torment. To prepare for the role, De Niro underwent an intense physical transformation. He reduced his body fat to under 4% through extreme dieting and weightlifting, giving Cady a lean, almost animalistic physique. He covered his body with crude, threatening tattoos, many of them biblical references or symbols of retribution. These weren't just for visual effect, they were narrative devices, revealing the way Cady had weaponized religion to justify his violence. De Niro also altered his speech for the role. He adopted a slow, molasses-thick, Southern drawl mixed with legal jargon and biblical quotations. It made every line sound like both a sermon and a threat. He studied recordings of real Southern criminals and televangelists to shape the voice. Every word out of Cady's mouth was calculated to intimidate, seduce, or unsettle.
You know, I think I might have found a companion. Do you mind if I put my arm around you?
What makes the performance so terrifying is not just Cady's capacity for violence, but his intelligence. De Niro plays him as a predator who's read the law and knows how to exploit it. He stalks his victims within the bounds of legality, making himself impossible to stop. His calm demeanor, smiling, polite, always one step ahead, only heightens the horror. He doesn't need to attack physically to dominate. His presence alone corrodes the family he targets. The infamous scene where Cady meets the teenage daughter, Danielle, in her school's auditorium is a masterclass in tension. De Niro's body language is slow and relaxed, his voice gentle, even seductive. But there's an unmistakable undercurrent of menace. He preys on Danielle's vulnerability without raising his voice or making direct threats. It's one of the most uncomfortable scenes in the film, and it works because De Niro never breaks character for a second. His commitment extended to his teeth. De Niro paid thousands of dollars to have them ground down to look more worn and menacing, then had them restored after filming. That level of physical sacrifice matched the mental intensity he brought to the role. Max Cady is not a caricature. He's a fully realized monster, forged from prison, vengeance, and fundamentalist rage. De Niro's performance is so complete, it leaves no room for sympathy, only dread. Neil McCauley. In Heat, Robert De Niro plays Neil McCauley, a professional thief operating by a strict personal code.
Don't let yourself get attached to anything you are not willing to walk out on in 30 seconds flat if you feel the heat around the corner.
Directed by Michael Mann, the film pits McCauley against Al Pacino's Vincent Hanna, an obsessive LAPD detective. De Niro's performance is built on stillness, discipline, and internalization. He creates a character who is almost silent in his emotional expression, but thunderous in presence. Neil McCauley is a man of precision. De Niro constructs the role with an economy of movement and language. His posture is rigid, his eyes focused, and his speech clipped. Every decision McCauley makes is measured and deliberate, and De Niro plays this with unshakable control. He's not flashy, not impulsive. He's the embodiment of criminal professionalism. His stillness in scenes becomes a weapon, silence is power, and McCauley wields it expertly. Before shooting began, De Niro and Mann studied the real Neil McCauley, a Chicago-based thief who inspired the script. De Niro interviewed former criminals and career heist men to understand how they operated. This research informed everything about his performance, from how McCauley carries a gun, to how he plans jobs, to how he walks into a room. He is methodical, not just in action, but in demeanor. De Niro never lets a wasted gesture slip through. The diner scene, where McCauley and Hanna share the screen for the first time, is legendary. There are no guns, no shouting, just two men talking. De Niro's performance in this moment is a masterclass in restraint. He doesn't raise his voice or posture aggressively. He listens, replies calmly, and makes it clear he understands the stakes. The power of the scene lies in the mutual recognition between two men who live by codes that will inevitably clash. Throughout the film, De Niro maintains a sense of quiet dread. Even in moments of romance, such as his relationship with Edie, he keeps emotional distance. His eyes show longing, but his body language remains closed off. McCauley wants connection, but he's conditioned to flee it. De Niro shows this internal war through glances and silence, a man who's never allowed himself the luxury of vulnerability. The final moments, when McCauley walks away from Edie without hesitation to avoid capture, are devastating. De Niro doesn't cry, doesn't speak, he simply walks, and in that walk is the full weight of the character's life choices. Sam Ace Rothstein. Robert De Niro's portrayal of Sam Ace Rothstein in Casino is a portrait of control, obsession, and the illusion of stability in a world built on crime. Loosely based on real-life casino operator Frank Rosenthal, Rothstein is a numbers man, a meticulous, calculating figure who runs a Las Vegas casino not through brute force, but through analytics, discipline, and ruthless precision. De Niro constructs Ace as a man who believes in order above all else. It's his strength, and ultimately, his undoing. Ace is introduced as the ultimate professional. He doesn't drink, doesn't gamble, and dresses with impeccable flair, each outfit color coordinated down to his shoelaces. De Niro uses this fastidious attention to detail to underscore Ace's desire to control everything. From supervising how many blueberries go into each muffin to tracking cheaters on the casino floor, Ace's world is governed by perfection. De Niro doesn't just act this mentality, he embodies it in posture, in pacing, and in the rhythm of his voice.
You can either have the money and the hammer, or you can walk out of here. You can't have both.
Unlike De Niro's earlier mob characters, Ace is not inherently violent. He's surrounded by violence, embodied in Joe Pesci's volatile Nicky Santoro, but he prefers diplomacy and business acumen. De Niro plays Ace with a calm, deliberate cadence, often narrating large portions of the film in voiceover, delivering complex operations with clarity and logic. That narration is crucial. It allows De Niro to showcase Ace's intelligence and paranoia simultaneously. Ace's downfall begins with personal entanglements, particularly his relationship with Ginger, played by Sharon Stone. De Niro navigates Ace's romantic arc with calculated discomfort. He doesn't know how to love Ginger, he knows how to buy stability, how to analyze risk, but real emotion eludes him. As Ginger spirals into addiction and betrayal, De Niro's controlled performance starts to crack. His voice becomes clipped, his movements more agitated, his gaze tighter. He remains in control, but it's clear the foundation is fracturing. One of the film's most telling moments is when Ace survives a car bomb. His reaction isn't dramatic. De Niro has him sit in stunned silence. It's not apathy, it's shock, filtered through a man who can't afford to show vulnerability. That moment underscores the fragility of Ace's empire. Everything looks secure, until it isn't. De Niro's performance is about erosion, the slow collapse of a man who built a palace of logic in a desert of chaos. If you enjoyed this deep dive video about Robert De Niro, you're gonna love the one on your screen, so go check it out now.